The office was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed down on the chest. The CEO sat behind his polished mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey untouched at his side. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered, alive with noise and light. Yet here, at the top of his empire, silence ruled. It was his birthday, but no one had dared to remind him. The expensive cake sent by his secretary sat on a table in the corner, untouched and immaculate, its golden frosting shining under the chandelier. He stared at it without hunger. A man who could buy the world rarely wanted what was placed in front of him. He leaned back in his chair, the weight of loneliness pressing harder than usual. Birthdays had once meant laughter, voices, clinking glasses. Now they were just another date on the calendar. Another reminder that he had built everything, and lost more than he cared to admit. The sudden knock at the door startled him. He frowned. No one disturbed him at this hour. "Come in," he said, his voice cool. The door creaked open, and instead of a nervous assistant, a little girl stepped inside. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her hair was tied in 2 uneven braids, and in her tiny hands she clutched a paper plate with a slightly crooked slice of cake. "I saved you some cake, mister," she said shyly, her voice trembling yet bright. For the first time in years, he was too surprised to speak. The child's mother appeared in the doorway, breathless, clearly horrified by her daughter's boldness. "Liza, you can't just..." But the CEO raised a hand, silencing her. His stern eyes, so used to cutting through boardrooms, softened as he looked at the girl. She walked closer, placing the plate carefully on his desk as though it were a treasure. "It's not as pretty as that one," she admitted, glancing at the untouched luxury cake in the corner. "But I thought, maybe you didn't have anyone to share with." The words pierced him in a way no business rival ever had. He looked down at the messy slice, the frosting smudged and uneven, and something in his chest shifted. "Thank you," he said at last, his voice low. The girl's face lit up. He reached for the slice of cake. It was nothing special. Store-bought, probably, with too much sugar and not enough care. Yet as he took a bite, the sweetness filled him in a way the elegant confection across the room never could. He chewed slowly, savoring not the taste but the gesture. Liza clapped her hands softly, delighted. "I knew you'd like it. Mama says birthdays aren't real unless someone makes a wish." He paused mid-bite, the fork heavy in his hand. A wish. He had stopped believing in such things long ago. Wishes were for children. Men like him dealt in deals, contracts, inevitabilities. But her wide, expectant eyes left him no choice. "What should I wish for?" he asked quietly. She giggled, as though the answer was obvious. "For happiness, of course." Something cracked inside him then. Not loudly, but enough to let in light. He closed his eyes and, for the first time in decades, made a wish. When he opened them, the little girl was still smiling at him, as though she already knew. Her mother shifted uncomfortably in the background, murmuring apologies, but he waved them away. He wanted this moment, wanted it to last. And when the girl leaned forward, pressing a small, star-shaped flashlight into his hand, he nearly lost his composure. "For when it's dark," she whispered. "So you don't feel alone." The door clicked shut, and once again the office was silent. Yet it wasn't the same silence as before. Only minutes ago, the quiet had felt suffocating, a heavy reminder of his isolation. Now it seemed softer, almost companionable, as though the lingering echo of a child's laughter still lived in the room. He set the paper plate down gently on his desk, his gaze lingering on the crooked slice of cake. Beside it, the little star-shaped flashlight continued to glow faintly, casting a golden pool of light over the polished mahogany. It was such a small thing. Plastic, cheap, probably bought at a corner store. And yet, to him, it felt priceless. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The glass of whiskey still sat beside him, untouched since the girl's arrival. For once, he didn't feel the urge to drink it. The bitterness no longer matched the quiet shift inside him. His eyes drifted toward the untouched, extravagant cake on the far table. Perfect symmetry, golden dust, a corporation's emblem proudly displayed in chocolate. It looked sterile now, almost ridiculous, a symbol of how hollow his celebrations had become. He imagined the secretary who had ordered it, checking a box on a to-do list. CEO's birthday cake, done. Nothing personal, nothing real. The messy slice, in contrast, had been given with thought. With care. She saved it for me, he thought, the words echoing in his mind. No one had saved anything for him in a very long time. He opened his phone. The screen lit up with dozens of new messages. Clients offering best wishes, politicians cloaked in politeness, distant relatives he hadn't spoken to in years. Each message was neat, polite, and utterly empty. He scrolled past them all. For the first time, the flood of hollow greetings didn't matter. One child's simple words had outweighed them all. His thumb hovered over his contacts. He thought of his daughter, grown now, living overseas. Their conversations had become rare, strained, mostly formal updates about work or polite acknowledgments of holidays. When was the last time I actually heard her laugh? He wondered. The question stung. He put the phone down, rubbing his temples. He had spent decades building walls of steel and glass around himself, convinced that power and wealth were enough. But tonight, with a cheap flashlight and a child's crooked slice of cake, those walls had begun to crack. A thought came to him, sudden and startling. It's not too late. The words frightened him, but they also filled him with something unfamiliar, hope. He could call his daughter. He could cancel tomorrow's endless meetings. He could take a day off, perhaps for the first time in years. He looked once more at the tiny glowing star on his desk. Slowly, almost reverently, he picked it up, turning it over in his palm. The light shimmered softly, steady and unpretentious. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel like the loneliest man in the city. The city lay beneath him, a galaxy of lights scattered across the night. From this height, it always looked distant, manageable, like something he could hold in his hand. But tonight, for the first time, he felt small in comparison, just one man in a world brimming with lives he had ignored for too long. The star-shaped flashlight still rested in his palm, its soft glow tracing warm patterns across his skin. He turned it over again and again, as though afraid the light might vanish if he let go. His phone buzzed. Another message, another meaningless, "Happy birthday, sir." He sighed, sliding it away. But then, almost against his own instincts, his hand moved back to the phone. He opened his contacts, scrolling past CEOs, investors, politicians, all the familiar names that filled his life with business but never with warmth. And then he found it. Anna, his daughter. He hadn't called her in months. Their last conversation had been brief, polite, transactional, like two strangers checking in out of obligation. His thumb hovered over her name, his chest tightening. He could almost hear her voice already, formal, reserved. She'll think I'm only calling because it's my birthday, he thought. But then he remembered Liza's proud little smile, her certainty that wishes mattered. He took a breath and pressed the button. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello. Her voice was cautious, tired. He imagined her in her apartment overseas, books piled on a table, the glow of her own city lights outside her window. "It's me," he said quietly. The words felt heavier than any speech he had ever given in a boardroom. I just wanted to hear your voice." There was a pause on the other end. Then, softly, she asked, "It's your birthday today, isn't it?" "Yes," he admitted, "but that's not why I called." His throat tightened. "I realized I've let too many years slip away. And I don't want to keep wasting what's left." Another silence. He feared she might hang up. But then, faintly, he heard her exhale. "You sound different," she said. He swallowed hard, gripping the little flashlight as though it might anchor him. "Maybe I am. Maybe I finally remembered what matters." When she spoke again, her voice carried a softness he hadn't heard in years. "Happy birthday, Dad." The word, Dad, hit him like a gift greater than any fortune he had ever earned. His eyes stung, and he let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. They talked longer than he expected. Not about business, not about obligations, just about her classes, her friends, the little details of her life he had never bothered to ask before. And for the first time in decades, he listened. When the call ended, he didn't feel empty. He felt alive. He placed the phone down, then carefully set the flashlight on the desk, its glow steady in the dim room. Tomorrow, he decided, things would change. He would make them change. And as he leaned back in his chair, watching the city lights flicker against the glass, he realized that his birthday gift had already come. Not from wealth, not from power, but from a little girl who had saved him a crooked slice of cake. Morning light spilled across the skyline, breaking through the glass walls of the office. Usually, he would already be buried in spreadsheets and phone calls, preparing to ring every possible hour out of the day. But today was different. The first thing he did was pick up his phone and type out a message to his secretary. "Cancel all my meetings. I won't be in today." Her reply came almost instantly, brimming with alarm. "Sir, are you sure? You have critical negotiations with..." He didn't finish reading. For years, his life had been dictated by other people's urgency. Today, he was reclaiming it. He rose, dressed more simply than usual, no stiff tie, no carefully chosen power suit. Just a dark sweater, comfortable slacks, and a coat. When he caught sight of himself in the mirror, he almost didn't recognize the man looking back. He looked lighter. In his pocket, the star-shaped flashlight clicked gently against his keys. He carried it with him like a talisman. Instead of heading to the corporate tower, his driver dropped him near a quieter part of the city, where glass buildings gave way to narrow streets and corner bakeries. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. People hurried past, bundled in coats, children clutching their parents' hands. He walked until he found the modest apartment building he remembered from the night before. His chest tightened as he climbed the narrow staircase. Would she recognize him without his tailored armor of wealth? Would she even open the door? He knocked softly. It was Liza who answered. Her eyes went wide. "Mister," she exclaimed, her voice filled with the same unfiltered joy as before. "You came." Her mother appeared quickly, wiping her hands on an apron, her face a mask of shock and hesitation. "Sir, this is very unexpected." He raised a hand gently. "Please, no titles today, just me." The woman faltered, clearly uncertain. But Liza tugged at her sleeve and chirped, "Let him in, Mama." He didn't even get to finish his cake yesterday. Against her better judgment, the mother stepped aside. The apartment was small, the furniture worn, but it radiated a warmth his penthouse had never known. The faint smell of soup simmered in the kitchen. Drawings covered the fridge, stars, flowers, lopsided houses. It was imperfect, cluttered, alive. He sat at their little wooden table, feeling strangely honored to be there. The mother offered him tea, still flustered. I hope you don't mind. We don't have much." He shook his head. "It's more than enough." Liza climbed onto the chair opposite him, grinning. "Did your wish come true yet?" He paused, the question striking deeper than she knew. He thought of the phone call with his daughter, of the fragile warmth beginning to grow between them. He thought of this kitchen, of the smell of real food, of laughter echoing in a place unpolished by wealth. "Yes," he said softly. "It's starting to." Liza beamed, as though she had orchestrated the entire thing. The mother, still hesitant, studied him carefully. "Why are you here, really?" He met her eyes, his voice steady but quiet. "Because last night reminded me what I've been missing. I don't want to keep living in empty rooms filled with gold. I want..." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I want to feel human again." The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was thoughtful. Liza leaned forward, her little hands on the table. "Then you can have soup with us. That always makes people feel better." For the first time in years, he didn't resist simplicity. He nodded. "I'd like that." As the mother ladled steaming soup into chipped bowls, the CEO, once the loneliest man in the city, realized that the richest gift of all was not wealth or power, but being welcomed into a place where someone was glad he had come. And in his pocket, the little star-shaped flashlight glowed faintly, as though to remind him that wishes, when given with love, could indeed come true.